Buddy, this is Sam with Doorstep Music Lessons, and today I want to show you one of my favorite resources that my piano students have really loved using over the years. You don't have to be a piano student to use this. You could be studying voice, guitar, violin. It really applies to every instrument and any age of student, whether they're young kids or senior citizens, adults, doesn't matter. There's a lot of great things in this resource. So today I want to talk about musictheory.net. It's the name of the website. It's a great website. There are some lessons here on the left in this tab. I'm not going to go through those today, but these are great things if you want to learn about the basics of music theory, or you want to supplement the lessons that you're already taking in person and get some additional information, some clarification, maybe things explained in a different way. I've used these as teaching guides in the past or assigned them as work in between lessons. But today I want to take a look specifically at exercises. And this website is great because these exercises are a lot of fun. I often have my younger students asking me, can we do these exercises today? And I have to tell them, well, if you get through all of your other things, then yes, let's do some exercises at the end. But it's really great. It works on your iPad, it works on your iPhone, it works on the computer, and it's a lot of fun. So the first exercise I want to take a look at is note identification. And this is how I would set this exercise up for a beginning student who is wanting to learn about the note names, maybe on the treble clef. Maybe if they're a little bit more advanced or they know their treble clef names, I'm going to add the bass clef in. But let's take a look at this. So I'm going to click on note identification. And the first thing that pops up is just going to be the game itself, which is the staff with the note and then the name of the note that you'd identify at the bottom. But I'm going to go over here to the gear icon and let me show you how I customize this exercise for my students. So again, for a beginner student, I'm going to leave the clef as the treble clef. There are different options, including bass clef, grand staff, alto clef, and some other clefs that you probably won't need to use. I'm going to adjust the range first of all. I'm going to bring the range down to just the notes that are on the staff itself. So I'm adjusting that top note so that it's on the F, and then I'm going to bring the bottom note up to that E. Sometimes for my beginning piano students, we see this C a lot and this D a lot, so I might leave the exercise there. Just depends on what we want to work. But if I'm really just focusing on those acronyms, every good boy deserves fudge, so I can remember my lines, or face rhymes with space, F-A-C-E. Then I'm going to use this range here of E to F on the high end. Now, positions, I'm going to leave that as lines and spaces. For my students who need to focus on just spaces or just lines, of course, I can adjust those as well. Key signatures, I'm going to leave this all in C major. I don't want to add any additional key signatures. It's not really the point of this exercise unless you have a student who's struggling to remember that the sharps or flats in a key signature apply to all the notes in that measure, and really, the first time you see that note in the measure, then maybe you would want to use that key signature. But other than that, I can't really think of why you would want that. Note names, I'm going to leave it on letters. I would avoid doing any kind of solfege because that's not really going to help you unless you're going straight for rote memorization. I would just leave it right on letters. That's the way we do it here in the US. Now for other countries, of course, there are other options. Helpers, I'm going to leave that set to off. Accidentals, especially in the beginning when we're just learning F-A-C-E, or every good boy deserves fudge, I'm going to turn these off so that we're not adding a layer of complexity. But certainly, as your student is getting more advanced, we can definitely add in those sharps and flats into the exercise by turning on accidentals or increasing the range, or later on changing the clef. Note filter, I'm not going to worry about that. Next question after audio. So if you're playing this game, sound isn't essential, but it is going to help you start to form some connections with what a note sounds like. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you you're going to get perfect pitch just from doing this exercise, but it might help you to start to recognize the sound of some of these notes. So I would leave that on and play this game with sound on. At the end of all this, your settings should look like this. My clef is treble clef. My range is from E up to F. I've got lines and spaces, just the C major key signature there. Note names are set to letters. All three helpers, accidentals, and note filter are off. Next question is after audio. And then down here at the bottom, once students get a little bit more familiar with these notes, and it's not, they're starting to answer 80, 90, 95% of them right, I'm going to flip on this challenge mode. And you have two options. You have time limit, so maybe we'll go for 5 minutes. How many notes can you identify in 5 minutes? That's a really fun challenge for kids. Or question limit, right? Out of 20 notes, how many can you answer correctly? And then there is this option here for multiple attempts. So if you don't get it right the first time, it will not move on until you have correctly answered the question. I'm going to leave that off for now. And let's just go through here. When I click on the gear icon, it's going to reset the exercise. And let's answer a few. So my note, of course, is a C. I can confirm that by looking at, is it a line or a space? Okay, it's a space. Acronym for spaces is F-A-C-E. Face rhymes with space, so F-A, stop on C. There's my C. Now you'll notice that even though I've turned accidentals off, they still appear here in the answer bank. So when my accidentals are off, the only notes I'm going to worry about is this middle row here. All right, my next one is another space. Space rhymes with face, F-A-C-E. All right, awesome. Now here I've got a line, so I need to use my acronym for lines. Every good boy deserves fudge. Every, all right, that's an E, perfect. Notice as I'm doing this, these are the things that I might say to a student, or if I'm a parent or a family member helping a student, I might be encouraging them to stop and figure out, is it a line or a space? And then have them tell me what the acronym is for lines or spaces. Again, face rhymes with space, F-A-C-E, or for lines, every good boy deserves fudge. Is a great one you can use. So in this case, got another space, that's an A, G, and so on, right? And you can set these up however you want. You can customize these exercises. This is one of my favorite ones, though, and probably the most requested one by students. Let me show you a couple of the other ones. Key signature identification. This is an awesome one. Again, you've got your gear icon here. This is going to focus on being able to visually look at a key signature and determine what is the name of that key signature. So when you customize the exercise, you've got different keys you can add. Sometimes I like to focus only on, the sharp keys that we know, or the flat keys that we know. Note names, again, I'm going to leave that as letters. Scales, this is talking actually about the quality of the key signature. Is it going to be a major key signature, a minor key signature? In this case, I'm sticking with major for sure, and especially in the beginning, right? We want to learn those major keys, probably in the order of the circle of fifths, because that's the easiest way to learn it on the piano, is you're adding one sharp each time you're going through that. Anyway, next questions. After animation challenge mode, again, we have a time limit, a question limit, and multiple attempts here. So this is another great exercise. For this one, if I was just going to set it for a beginner student, I would maybe give them, these 3 key signatures and say, okay, we're going to focus on sharps. Knowing that the last sharp is T or the 7th scale degree, I need to go up a half step to A. So first of all, I would have the student identify what is the last sharp. There it is. It's on a C, right? F-A-C, space rhymes with face, F-A-C. Okay, so it's C sharp is our last note. Now we need to go up a half step from C sharp. If we were looking at a keyboard, I would point them to C sharp and say, what's the next note after that? That's a D. So we are in the key of D, and I find it's very important that the student also says major, right? We're not just in the key of D. There's no such thing, right? D major, D minor, which one? D major. Same thing here. Last sharp is F sharp. Go up a half step from F sharp, you get to G. G major is our key signature, and so on. So this is another great exercise that students can use. Interval identification, this one might be a little bit more advanced, and for this one, if I'm doing this for beginning students, I'm certainly going to change that range. I'm going to turn off the key signatures. The display mode, I'm going to leave that on harmonic, which means the two notes happen at the same time, as opposed to melodic, where you have one note, then the next note. Require quality, definitely important, right? We want to know what kind of interval it is, a third, a fourth, a fifth. It's not enough. We need to know the quality of the interval, major third, minor second, etc. Intervals all, I'm probably not going to worry about some of these that are a little bit less common. I'm going to worry specifically maybe about some simple intervals like identifying the difference between major seconds and major thirds. This is a great beginner lesson that we could easily spend 5 to 10 minutes on one day in a week. My difficulty level doesn't really matter because we're not going to be doing that, but I am going to turn off accidentals for level 1. We're not going to do any compound intervals, which means having notes on top of notes. That's over an octave. That's not important to us. And again, our challenge mode options are the same every time. Let's look at what we've got. So here, the two notes are right next to each other. There's no note in between. I can look at that and say that's a D, and that is an E. Okay, that is, of course, we do have one note in between, but we're looking only at a minor or major second or a major third. So there's no note names in between D or E. Major second. Here's another one where we have A and B, another major second interval. Now here's a great one. This is a major third interval because we do have F, G in between, and then we have that A, etc. So this is another great exercise you can do. I'm going to skip scale identification, chord identification. You can go through some of these on your own, kind of figure out what ones work best if you want to look at some of these different ones. But one I really do recommend that students do is actually this ear training exercise called interval ear training. I think this is probably one of the most important ear trainings that you can start to become familiar with. And the way that I set this up is I set it up so that we're first of all only using the intervals that I want to use, so maybe the intervals of a major scale. Let me set those up. And I'm basically just turning off all the minor intervals along with the tritone because that's what makes up our major scale here. So we should have unison, major second, third, fourth, fifth, major sixth, major seventh, and an octave. Any of these down here are just variations of these up here with an octave separating them, so it's not important for us. And these minor intervals, I might mix them in once a student gets more advanced, but for a beginner student, I think this is a great way to start getting familiar with the notes of the major scale. And even I might start with just, some very simple intervals, unison, second, third, right? We're building our way up. Play mode ascending, that means it's going to play the bottom note first, then the top note. Speed, that's what it sounds like, slower is fine. Instrument is a piano, that's great. Now what I'm going to do here is really important. I'm going to change the range mode to starting note, and then I'm going to change the range to be all the same note. In this case, we'll do C4. So I can drag that, or I can use the arrow keys here. And what that's doing is that means the bottom note is always going to be the same. And that's what makes this exercise so great, is that you can hear a baseline pitch and know that that's a C. And then you can start to figure out, okay, how far was the distance from that note I know, the C, to the interval that I'm hearing? Again, we have next question immediately. That's fine. Challenge mode is the same as before. Time limit, question limit, multiple attempts. Let's listen to some of these. I'm going to play it again because I didn't talking over it. All right, so that's very clear to me. C up to E, major third. Same note twice. I'll listen again. That's a unison. Now, of course, there are those of you who would say the same note 2 times in a row isn't a unison, that the unison has to happen at the same moment. For the purposes of this interval, because we're not playing the notes at the same time, we'll call it a unison. Another major third. There's our major second, and you can have a student practice this singing their major scale if they know their solfege, do, re, or if they don't know their solfege or they just want to practice identifying the quality of the interval, another great way to do it. So those are the basic exercises that I recommend with musictheory.net. Certainly every exercise on here I think is really great. This has been around for many, many, many years, since I was probably in middle school, so at least 15 years, more probably at this point. A very long time, probably closer to 20 years, I would guess. Really great resource, and you have a lot of different abilities to customize this to make it as easy or as difficult as you want. But teachers, I really hope this helps you guys identify this as a useful resource. Families, I hope this is a great practice resource and gives you a little bit more understanding about what you can do for your students. And students, if you're watching this, this is a great way to learn about setting these things up for yourself. Like I said, you can do this on your phone, your iPad, and it's very easy to do. It's very fun to do. I recommend headphones so you can hear the sounds, or a speaker on your laptop or something like that. But definitely recommend musictheory.net as a terrific resource for families.